What if I told you that at one point, nearly every single one of our ancestors just vanished? That the story of us came so close to ending, almost a million years before it really got going. It sounds like a movie plot, right? Well, according to some incredible new research, it might have been our reality.
Let's start with a single number that just sends a shiver down your spine. 1,280. For a very long time, that was the estimated number of our ancestors who are actually able to have children and pass on their genes. That's it. The entire hope for humanity could have fit inside a small movie theater. So where on earth did a number that specific and that scary come from? Well, it came from a huge study in 2023 that totally shook up the scientific community. A team of researchers basically said, hey, we think our ancient family tree went through this massive population crash, a bottleneck that almost wiped us out completely.
And we're not talking about a bad decade or even a tough century. This crisis may have lasted for over 100,000 years. I mean, think about it. Our own species, Homo sapiens, has only been on the planet for about 300,000 years. This supposed bottleneck went on for an unbelievable amount of time.
Now, this whole idea isn't just some wild guess. It's the result of some seriously cool scientific detective work. And the clues weren't buried in the ground. They were found in a place that's a lot closer to home. Actually, they're inside every single one of us, in our DNA. Which of course brings us to the biggest question of all, right? How in the world can scientists look at people alive today and figure out what was happening almost a million years in the past? The answer is hiding in the tiny differences in our DNA, the genetic variations that make us all unique.
The main tool they used is something with a really technical name, the Site Frequency Spectrum, or SFS. But forget the name. Just think of it like a genetic barcode. It scans a population's DNA and sorts all the mutations, showing which ones are super common and which ones are really rare. In the shape of that barcode, it holds the secrets of that population's history.
And here you can see what one of those barcodes actually looks like. The scientists fed these patterns into a really small computer program called FitCol. By reading the barcode, FitCol can essentially travel back in time mathematically to figure out if a population was growing, shrinking, or staying the same.
Okay, this is a super important point. When that program came up with the number 1280, it wasn't counting every single human ancestor walking the Earth. It was counting the effective population size. That's a bit different. It's a measure of genetic diversity. It only counts the people who are successfully having kids and passing their DNA down the line. You know, the ones whose genes actually made it to you and me. The total number of people was probably higher, but this is the number that really mattered for our survival.
So, let's look at the evidence, because this is where it gets really interesting. The genetic story that the computer model spit out was, dramatic on its own. But what made everyone sit up and pay attention was that it seemed to solve a huge, long-standing mystery from a totally different area of science.
And this right here is the jaw-dropping moment. On the left, you've got the genetic data from the study, showing that massive dip in population for our ancestors in Africa. And on the right, that's the timeline of the African fossil record. And would you look at that? Right in the exact same time period, there's this weird, mysterious gap where we just haven't found many fossils. It was like genetics and archaeology were telling the exact same story without ever talking to each other.
For a minute there, it really felt like a slam dunk. The case was closed, the data lined up, the hidden story of our near extinction was finally out. But you know how it is in science. The story is never, ever that simple. Because just a year later in 2024, another group of scientists published their own paper. They took a closer look at all the evidence, they dug into the really complex math involved, and they suggested that maybe something else was going on.
So here it is, the debate in a nutshell. On one side, you have the original claim, a massive population crash down to about 1,280 individuals. And on the other, you have the rebuttal, saying that signal in the DNA probably wasn't a real event, but a statistical artifact, basically a ghost in the data.
And this quote is straight from that second paper. It's a really direct challenge to the original idea. And you know what? That's not a bad thing. That is exactly how science is supposed to work. You make a big claim, and other smart people try to poke holes in it. So what was their argument? Well, for starters, they found a huge red flag. That signal of a population crash, it showed up really clearly when they looked at the DNA of people with African ancestry, but it was pretty much gone when they looked at the DNA of people with non-African ancestry. That's weird, right? If it happened to our common ancestors, shouldn't we all have that signal? They suggested that the super complex math you have to use to look this far back in time might have a quirk that can sometimes create a ghost signal, something that looks exactly like a population crash but isn't actually real.
At this point, you're probably thinking, okay, so who's right and who's wrong? But honestly, that's not even the most interesting question here. The coolest part of this whole thing is what it shows us about how science actually works.
It's really easy to see this and just think, oh, well, I guess the first study was wrong. But that's not how progress happens. Science isn't about just getting the right answer on your first try. It's a process.
What we're watching is the scientific method playing out right in front of us. Step 1, a team proposes a bold, new idea based on the evidence they have. Step 2, other experts come in and challenge it, test it, and see if it holds up. And through all that debate and back and forth, the whole community gets closer to the truth. This isn't a failure. This is the system working perfectly.
So what this is really about isn't finding one simple right answer. It's about the messy, complicated, but ultimately amazing process of how we try to figure out our own story. It's about the search.
So let's bring it all home. Why should any of us care about a scientific debate over something that might or might not have happened nearly 1 million years ago? Because this whole mystery tells us something really important about who we are.
Look, whether our ancestors really did drop to 1280 breeding individuals, or if the number was much higher, the big picture is the same. Our existence on this planet has been fragile. Our family line has survived some absolutely incredible challenges. And this whole debate just proves that our DNA is like a history book, with chapters we're only just now learning how to read.
So, if you remember anything from all this, let it be these 3 things. 1. Our species story is one of unbelievable resilience. 2. The story of all of us is written inside every one of us, in our genes, just waiting to be read. And 3. Science isn't just a list of facts in a textbook. It's a living, breathing conversation. It's a process for asking better and better questions.
And that leaves us with one last big question. This whole debate over the bottleneck is just one tiny chapter in our history. It really makes you wonder, what other incredible secrets about our past, about who we are, and the unbelievable journey it took to get here, are still hiding in plain sight, right inside our own DNA?